account, I'm a bit of a procrastinator. So I decided in March to do this 100 kilometers walking for breast cancer research. And as a good procrastinator, I've only done 75 till now. So when I finish here, I'm going to come out of my house and start making circles around Ramsgate. So if any of you fancy donating to cancer research, I'm going to be dying tonight doing 25k walking, which is really good. So just so you know, if that I will have you in mind, and that energy pulling me and pushing me towards my goal, to finalize this till midnight tonight and celebrate. So if any of you are there to support Sveta, I can see
I'm with you.
That's it.
I'm doing the same one.
I can donate
some of my steps to you because I'm way ahead for March. But well done. Well done.
I had a couple of injuries, but I'm not going to let it stop me. I decided tonight is the night. So
well done.
Yeah, those who donated, I'm going to respect them. Anyway, we actually have an amazing charity to talk about tonight. So I'm going to say official welcome to everyone. It is 6:04. If you're not here, you will be made to sing as soon as Carrie lets you in, just so we make sure that you're not late next time. Welcome to the UK Housekeepers Association monthly meeting. Tonight is the Scottish night. So you can expect haggis and dancing now. Tonight we have Joe Wilby, who's going to actually sing a little hello and introduction to the night. We have Gordon McIntyre and myself, Joe Simovich, as your host tonight. So Joe, without any further ado, tell us a little bit about what to expect tonight.
So welcome everybody from grey and very windy Scotland at the moment, but hopefully we'll get some sunshine over the coming rest of the week. First of all, happy Easter this coming weekend. Hope everybody gets to see some family, be out in the open and without hugs. Yeah. So this evening I'd really like to welcome Gordon McIntyre to be our presenter and our speaker for this evening. Gordon, as well as having the chair of the Hospitality Health charity that he's going to speak about tonight, he's also the Associate Dean of Hospitality and Tourism at the City of Glasgow College. So he's a very busy man, and we really appreciate the fact that when we approached him, he didn't hesitate in coming and speaking this evening. So thank you very much, Gordon, for your time. I know you're very busy speaking with Hit Scotland tomorrow as well, so we really appreciate it. So I'll hand over to you now.
Well, thank you very much indeed to the two Joes. I have to say, yes, it is rather dark and dismal here in Glasgow tonight, and we're very jealous of the heat wave to those of you who are down in the southeast, because it sounds like you're having the early summer down there. So enjoy that for your Easter. But what a pleasure it was when I was asked by Joe to come along tonight and spend some time to talk about the charity that we founded 3 years ago and has been very successful so far, I feel, and others feel in Scotland, in supporting our staff and students in the sector. I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay for everyone, just to try to go through a presentation, because it's always easy when you've got something to look at and to talk to. So maybe those able to put our thumbs up, you're able to see the screen, if that's working well, all well and good. I'm a social media fan, let me start off with that. And I don't know how many of you out there are on these various social platforms, but if you're on them, it would be great if we could boost our following. And I think it's an amazing thing that we've done in the past couple of years. And through the social media platforms particularly, I think that's how we have seen the growth of support that we've had, as well as fundraising and the support in the form of mental health support we've been giving. So give us a follow. And, why did this start? I suppose the charity we founded just about 3 years ago, and we actually launched it 2 years ago. It took about a year between accountancy and Oscar, our regulator up here, to take cognizance of that. But we felt that there was an awful lot going on within the UK as far as we call the epidemic of mental health and mental well-being. And as you can see from the screen there, it's exceedingly high. A number of years ago, this was also highlighted by the Royal Princes, as you well know, and I think that also just gave the whole situation that further leverage, that understanding and doing something better. But as far as I think we're concerned in our industry, is that for those of us who've been around as long as I have, and you can see maybe in your screens, I've got quite a lot of grey hair up there, that there's been issues going on in our industry now for many years. And I felt that at the time there was support out there, but was the support being accepted and being looked for by those people who really needed it? So I should draw your attention to the stats on the screen there are from pre-COVID, way back before last year. So things will have certainly changed, as I could talk about later on since then. And an example that I have to sort of draw upon here, when we founded the charity and we launched it, we work also alongside somebody I know who's spoken to this group before, and that's Mark from Hospitality Action. And we promote an employee assistance programme that they offer at Hospitality Action. And so Ellie came up to Glasgow, the launch we had just 2 years ago at the Grand Central Hotel. We had about 125 delegates joined us that morning, and it was a fantastic launch. But the story she told was very typical of what can happen in our industry, just to give you a picture to start off this evening. And as opposed to saying housekeepers, I'm going to call it a chef in this particular situation. So a chef finishes his shift. We used to get things called sweat pints in the kitchen. I remember back when I was a cook myself at one stage. And your first sweat pint just disappeared, and then you had another drink after that, and that's the one you might have enjoyed. You then go back into the bar and you perhaps have more drinks in the bar. The bar would maybe close at midnight. If you're in a city centre, you can move on, believe it or not, to a casino to drink further. As you drink further in the casino, you then might find yourself, believe it or not, playing the tables. And before you know it, it's 4 in the morning and you're heading home, obviously quite poor and rather inebriated. And the situation really is a true story about a young chef who did this repeatedly. And not only did he develop almost an alcohol problem and addiction, he also developed a gambling addiction, which then, unfortunately, with his family, he was married with children, he found himself on the street because he got kicked out of the house and he was made homeless. So as you can see, that circumstances as far as mental health in our industry was really, really obvious. And that's only one example of very many that I have heard of and people have repeated to me over the years that I've had this charity going. So we know fine that there's lots going on within the industry. And it's not limited purely to chefs. It's not limited to front of house. It's not limited to housekeeping. It's across, I feel, the whole sector. From general managers to area managers down, from owners, and I mean that by small multi-owner operators to multinationals. The pressures that are on people within the industry now are really quite excessive, and it does raise anxiety and stress levels to that of which they turn to alcohol and various other things to try to escape. So in our industry, we had to think, what should we do? And very clearly, there was lots of pain and suffering going on around about us. In our industry, I also have to feel, and I'm sure across the whole of the world, this is the same case, the hospitality industry is like a family. It's a small world, if I could use that expression, because everybody knows everybody else very often within our sector. And so what we really have got to consider here is why and where can we get help from? And one of my sad friends and stories brought about the formation of this charity was a chef took his own life. Now, this is my daughter's first head chef, because my daughter also is in the industry. And so having worked with this head chef and had fantastic training, she moved on, he moved on. But sadly, 3 years ago, this poor man took his own life. And a number of us at the funeral were talking, as we were, sadly, about the great memories and the loss of a great talent. We felt, you know, why and how could something not have been done to support this? Now, we know of places like Mind, we've in Scotland got SAMH, and there's now a huge number of other mental health organisations out there to help people. However, within the hospitality industry, we don't like to look far from where we are. And we decided that what really should happen is we need something within the hospitality industry to help signpost and to help support those people who need help. Because they weren't turning to the Samaritans or to other organisations like Alcoholics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous. We knew they were there, but they weren't turning to them. So we felt if we could put something with a badge of hospitality on it, it would then perhaps allow these people to really fulfil the needs of doing the best they can to turn their lives around. And the slide you're looking at right now, I think you'll all be looking at it saying, it's so obvious. That's absolutely right. It is very obvious and it is very right. But sometimes in business, we forget that our staff are human. They become a commodity. They become a number. And lots of organisations sadly can treat people that way, but we know they shouldn't. I think what we've also got to try to do is, and more so in this past year than ever before, is understand what's going on externally in people's lives. Because when they come to work, they're not just coming to work with an empty mind and a clear mind to do the job ahead. They're bringing huge amounts of baggage. You don't know what's happened in their households before they've left and come into the building. So what we have to do is to do as much as we possibly can to understand that. And I've been around, as I've said before, a long time. Our industry still does have, whether we believe it or not, is marred with a reputation of long hours, low pay, and not looking after its staff as well as it should do. So I think everybody has got a job to do now in our industry to get rid of that reputation that we've had in the past. But the hospitality industry is about being hospitable, looking after people, caring people, how you make people feel when they are in our establishments. But what we sometimes forget in our business is that staff should be treated the same way, if not better, than our guests. And I often talk about a restaurateur that some people on this call tonight might remember and might know of, a chap called Danny Meyer, a New York restaurateur. Now, Danny, if you've not heard of him, I would ask you to Google him and take a good read at some of his quotes. Danny has always said that he puts staff first. And Danny Meyer, I heard he spoke in Glasgow quite a long time ago when I met him. And it was just not anything new or anything different, but it really was. It was incredible the way he puts his staff far beyond his suppliers, far beyond his customers. But it's as simple as saying, if you look after your staff, they will look after the customers. The customers will come because they've been so well looked after. And your bottom line, which is most area managers and senior managers worry, are you going to make that margin? But as Danny says, it will happen. If you look after your staff, everything will work out absolutely fantastically well. And I really wish that you could look him up and read some of his information, because he's got great quotes and great things that are there. But staffing, as we know, any of you who have been involved working with the HR team, it is the most expensive cost in the building. I think a lot of people think that the food costs or the alcohol costs in our buildings are expensive. It's the staff. But they are not just the most important asset, they are the most expensive asset. And it's strange how often it's dismissed and not put as number one as far as looking after them is concerned. What I'd like to do is to take a wee quick tour of the website in case you've not had a chance to look at that yet. And so to allow me to do this, with the wizardry behind the technology, it should take me out of the slideshow with a slight delay, I'm sure, but it should then take me onto the World Wide Web. And one of the beautiful things about the World Wide Web is that although we are a Scottish charity, what we really are able to do is to use our charity status, not just in Scotland, which is what we're meant to do, but because it's web-based, we are able to share information on our website. Now, let me just give a wee brief history about how the charity was founded and formed, if I can, because it makes me feel quite proud, because it's a wee bit family that were involved in this. Now, I've been in the industry, education for 35 years, and industry for about another 10 years on top of that. And I'm pretty proud to say that my parents were hoteliers, and so it's a wee bit in my blood that I've come into this industry. But I have a daughter, I've mentioned already, and she's in the industry. She started off at the college and trained in the chefing side. And what she then went on to do was to come out front and became manager of a restaurant. What she's recently done, believe it or not, is decided to become a home economics teacher and to move into the world of education herself. But what she really wants to do in further education, or in schools education, is to make sure that the young people understand more about the hospitality industry. And I know in Scotland, there has been absolutely not enough of these home economics teachers promoting that in the past. So I'm quite proud she's going to do that. So as far as the charity is concerned, we've got 5 trustees, and that's one of the trustees is my youngest daughter. But my oldest daughter, who is Katie, is actually a psychologist. She's based up in Teesside at the moment. And so she is a clinical psychologist. And so she's got, if you like, the wherewithal, the knowledge, the skill about the mind side of things. And so she's our brains behind the operation, if you like. A couple of other trustees I have, I'm proud to say, are past students of mine. One's Andrew Scott. He's got his own business called Victus Consultancy. And Andrew is out of college now for quite a long time. But it's amazing how with good students and a good college, they keep in touch. They come back for advice. They value the advice from their college staff. And I know that in accountancy, one of my colleagues, Mary McManus, has very been supportive to help him with the accountancy side of the business. And he's now a consultant as well as his own coffee shop. Now, Andrew, as I say, is experienced through across the whole of Scotland as well as in England. And so he brings a bit of depth of knowledge of being an entrepreneur in some ways and having his own business. Now, he's younger than me, as are my two daughters, and our fourth trustee is a guy called Fergus Watson. And Fergus was, up until recently, the sommelier #1 at the Balmoral. And so that's our Michelin restaurant through in Edinburgh. He's recently left there and he's come through to join Kale Brew in Glasgow, which has recently won a Michelin star also. But Fergus, once again, is part of the young team. And I have another trustee called Donald, who's also in the hospitality sector in a restaurant in Glasgow. And all these people are young. I'm old, they're young. And when I founded the charity, I thought it was so important that I got these young people on board to support me to understand how the young people's mind is working. Because the industry has got so many young people coming through it, it would be of only any benefit that if we knew how to target and how to get through to these young people. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, social media has been one of these huge assets. So on the website itself, what I would say is it was founded 3 years ago, a bit arduous to get through the process, but it was worth it. But where we've really come on in our big step is the resources. And what we have got along the top, if you can see it, it says quite clearly it's not a manned website, because what we're really here to do is...
Gordon, can I just stop you for a second?
Yep.
I think what you're sharing is still your PowerPoint and people can't see
What is
the
it?
website actually, so
Okay,
it's quite important. So if you stop sharing
we'll do that.
that's it, and then share again your screen, but share the section with your website.
Okay, now tell me this.
This is the bit that is quite important because, like you said, even though this is a Scottish charity, the resources are available to everyone on this call. So for our Scottish housekeepers, please be mindful of all of the opportunities that you have. We just saw that, Gordon, so that was a good share. So we were quite happy with that, and then you ran away with it. Yeah, so if you share it again, that was good. But for the English housekeepers, even though you can't access some of the charity aspects here, you can certainly access some of the resources. Is that correct, Gordon?
Absolutely correct. Yes. Apologies. Let me just see. Does that come up now?
That is perfect. That has come up, and you can now, we can now see your screen.
Okay, marvellous. Okay, so I'm moving on to this sort of signposting. Along the top of the screen, you'll find it is not manned. What we don't want is people to try to contact us and expect a fast response. We have not got trained counsellors the way Hospitality Action have, but what we have got is signposting and resources. And so the support resources you can see just now for the obvious places being alcohol, drugs and gambling, as well as mental health. But what we've also added on here is things like resilience, bereavement, because at the beginning, when we founded the charity and we shared this with a number of people, it's amazing the things that you didn't think about and other people brought to your attention. But the resilience was added because of college students, particularly, and young people in the industry who don't seem to bounce back, having been given perhaps some poor feedback or maybe an assessment at college. They're not happy and able to accept that type of feedback at all. So what they do is they just curl up in a corner and they don't return to work or return to college. So we've built a resilience training program, which we now deliver and support them with. And the employee assistance program, you can see at the foot of that page as well, is the one that is offered by Hospitality Action. But more importantly, obviously we hit COVID last year. And what we felt we had to do was two things. One, we first of all signposted the support that Hospitality Action can offer and the BEN, which is a benevolent society in Scotland, can offer financially. Because when the pandemic hit, I was interviewed for a radio station here in Scotland and was asked to give some comments of how I thought this might work out. And I said, well, there's three problems. The first problem, we've obviously got a medical pandemic. I said, the next thing we'll have will be a financial pandemic. And the last thing we'll have, which is where we really are almost now, and that I think is well-being and a mental health pandemic. So what we've got here is support in a sense of where people can access support in a virtual sense, because we've now become experts at Zoom, experts at Teams and all other platforms, WebEx and so on. So what we have done, as opposed to delivering what we'd have done in the way of normal sort of horseshoe-shaped training in the past, we have now got our trainer, who's a girl called Heather Smith, and Heather's an expert trainer in this type of thing. We'll put a range of support websites, PowerPoints up, some with voiceovers, and we have also got some videos up at this particular stage, as well as other links. So what we are doing now is we're focusing on this part of our website, and we're about to put up some of the resilience training that we've done in the past. We're now building that into workbooks with supportive tools. That's going to be launched on the website in the next week or two. It's been worked on as I speak. But these are the things that I think, and you heard Joe mention, people from not just in Scotland, but out with Scotland and England and around the world can access. Because what's been interesting for me to see in this past year is how many people from around the world have Googled the health and hospitality or mental health hospitality, putting these words together. And we actually, believe it or not, are now coming up almost first, if not second or third on that Google search. And that's causing us a bit of angst to make sure this stays up to date, but also in just the funding and supporting it. So that particular area of the well-being that we've got has been hugely significant. But what's also given our situation in recent time, I think, great profile and drawing attention to us is we have installed another section on the website, and who knows, I may ask Joe to send me something in after tonight, is we've got some famous names and some famous faces from around Scotland as well as England, because Fred sneaks in here, as you can see, of people across the sector who are influential. And what we have to try to do here is, through our social media channel, is to put as much up as possible about this, and that then draws more and more hits to our website. And that's been an absolutely fantastic resource as that's developed. But likewise, we've developed another part on the website, which is our blog. And in profile is updated every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, twice a month. And our blog is updated every single month. And it's very much hospitality related. It's very much well-being, mental health related. It could be sectorial, it could be in a kitchen, it could be in a bar. So we have got a number of stories and well-written, I think, blogs that we now have on the website and have been getting put up there monthly during the period of the pandemic. So, you know, what I have to say is that the website itself, over the past period of time, has been developed more quickly and rapidly than I would have expected, but particularly because of the pandemic. But what I want to do is to come back out, and I'll stop sharing that one, and I'll go back in and I'll share my PowerPoint. I hope again if I can get back in to do that. Which was this one here. Because something else that we felt we have to do, and it'll be interesting, you know, following my presentation with any questions, is that what we find is that industry needs to change. We're providing great support, I think, for staff and students that are entering the industry and working in the industry. However, what we do realise is that the environment within which they're working could make it a much more happy place to be, welcoming place to be. And once again, going back to me changing that stigma that's been attached with the poor sector that we've all spent so many years working in. So we founded a wellness charter, and this certificate has been awarded to several hotels in Scotland, as well as other businesses within the hospitality sector. And what we're really asking for the employers to do is to behave differently. And when I say behave differently, what we're asking for them to do is, in actual fact, to change the culture within the organisation. Now, it's a huge ask, and it's a bit like turning an oil tanker, but it's happening. And what I have to say genuinely, from what I'm hearing, is there's more and more employers making differences to make it a better place for people to work. And this has been brought about by key employers, perhaps. First of all, I'll mention one called Buzzworks in Scotland, and they have been in the Sunday Times top 50 list now for 5 years. And it's simple things that they can make effective, things like 4-day weeks. It could be things like having one weekend off in 4. They may have an employee assistance programme for their staff. They may include a gym membership as part of their employment. It might be they set up somebody as a wellbeing champion, and they might organise walks, whether it's walking around the town or the local village, or whether it's climbing a hill on a Sunday on days off, whatever can be appropriate. And so what's so important is that businesses now can make small differences, which really become a big change in people's actual mental health condition. On top of that, the benefits, of course, are clear to see, that the engagement of the staff becomes much greater. We find the absence rate is much lower. What we do find is the productivity is higher. And we know find if we're not having to recruit and spend time advertising, that's money saved at the same time. But on top of that, it then attracts better employees, because the word of mouth gets out that everybody wants to work for the best employer in the town, in the village. And so that's where they have a queue of people waiting to get jobs. And so the employer then gets to pick, if you like, of the talent pool that's out there. So to me, it really is a bit of a no-brainer. And so what is happening across the country that I'm aware of, and I'm sure across England, the same thing will be happening in developing too. So that's what we're trying to do with our Wellbeing Charter, which we launched 2 years ago. And later tonight, I'll mention the Hoteliers Charter that Sally Beck from the Royal Lancaster launched about a month ago. One of the wee things I do like to cover when I'm asked to speak, of course, is to see what tips, what help I can provide the people that I have the opportunity of sharing a few words with. Because people very often say, well, how can you help us? How can we watch and how can we look for our staff, look out for them better and see how we can help them? Now, what we're doing within the charity and with lots of the fundraising that we've been managing to achieve is paying for staff in Scotland to go through a mental health first aid course. Most of the businesses that you're all in will have first aiders because that's health and safety legislation. We all know that. However, I wonder how many have got a mental health first aider on the payroll. So we're paying for it. It costs us about £300 per delegate to go on a 2-day course, but they then become a mental health first aider. I can't obviously do that in half an hour chat. However, what I can perhaps do is offer 1 or 2 tips and advice of how you can start to consider and look after your teams in a better way if you can possibly. And this is helpful not only for you looking after your team, but it's also maybe helpful for yourself at the same time. Because I'm sure as housekeepers, particularly head housekeepers and deputy head housekeepers, it's exceedingly stressful. I wonder how many days go past when your full complement turn up to work. To me, that would be the first stressor. If I turned up as a housekeeper thinking, how am I going to get these rooms done? Because I've got 1 person down or 2 people down. So I think no matter where you are in the organisation, stress is going to be part of your life when you're at work. But remember, it's what you might also take into your work. But the things you see on the screen really are ideas that can give you to see the differences in your staff and to see what might be causing them stress and how you can manage and support them. But the question I quite often get asked is it when someone goes quiet, if one of your members of staff is just very quiet, does that show they're maybe becoming anxious, stressful, or maybe even heading towards depression? My answer to that really is not necessarily. It might well be the case. However, the advice I would suggest is look for changes in behaviour. It could be somebody who's normally quiet, but then becomes very talkative or talking fast. It's changes in behaviours is what I would suggest you should be looking for mostly. And then what you have to consider is how do you intervene? What intervention can you make? And something to consider is maybe how you talk to these people and how you can tell the rest of your team to talk to each other in some ways. And I know when we come back after days off or after a break, the first thing is, oh, how are you? And you might get an answer back saying, fine. That's a word we use in Scotland quite a lot. Well, I'm fine. And that's it's kind of just okay. It's not good. So what we want to do is just move that further on. And maybe don't even ask them how they are. Maybe ask them, how did they sleep? How did you sleep last night? Is a different opportunity of asking a question that might allow you to amass information as to whether or not that individual is fine or not fine. Maybe ask what they've had to eat or when did they last eat. Might give you a sign or a signal whether they're just behaving normally or whether something's going on untoward that you should be considering doing something about. And also, I think what's important is if you do see something that's maybe a wee bit untoward, don't be shy to ask a little bit more. And the way of doing that might be almost saying, are you okay me asking you that question, or is it okay to talk about this? And that way you're not going to offend them and you're not going to put them in a situation of becoming more embarrassed, because they might say, no, I'd rather not talk. And if that is the case, obviously that's that conversation closed. However, they might say, yes, I'd love to talk. And just that one stage of that opportunity they didn't expect to get, they would then have. And the next question that would come from yourself would be, how about a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? And before you know it, they'll be opening up and you're then starting to give them the help and support that perhaps they might be looking for and might need. So how can we help deal with that? What can we do within this, the situation of stressors that are on out there? And the one wee thing we've got to try to do is to make a list, first of all. But then what I have to say is try to break that cycle, because what we have got very easily, and many people have got negative thoughts. So what we're trying to do effectively is to change them from negative thoughts into positive thoughts. And we want to try to move them away from that particular area. And I think the faster we can do that, the faster we'll get positive behaviours. And by getting them to write things down, it's going to allow them to start to have a list almost to say how they can manage that mindset. And well-being is a wee bit we're starting to move on to, about routines and being busy. And I think that's so important. And I think keeping in touch, communication and contact have been two big words that we've heard through the pandemic, that so many of you have WhatsApp groups, maybe Zoom quizzes. Maybe you're too tired of them and desperate to get back to work to have the last Zoom quiz of your life with your team. But it's so, so important. So I'm going to leave you almost with this presentation with a couple of top tips that I'd like to sort of pass on to you. And what I have to really say is it's dead simple to remember them. The first one is what you're probably all very good at, because we're in the hospitality industry, is by being connected. You know, keep talking, keep WhatsApping, and keep messaging your friends, your family. And if there's someone you think you've not talked to for a while, or they've not talked to you, don't wait for them to connect. You make the connection to them. And you don't know how many other people have talked to them or connected with them in that day. So please take time to make that one message, that one phone call, if you can. Learn something new. I don't know how many of you in the past period of time, if you've been on furlough perhaps, you might have had an opportunity of doing something different. And learning something, taxing your mind, making your mind think differently is hugely good for your well-being. I think the next one is an obvious one for the hospitality industry, is about being kind, because that is about how you make people feel. If you smile at someone, they smile back, and that smile goes around the world. By helping somebody out, people think you're helping the other person. However, remarkably, what it's doing is actually helping you and keeping you positive. And so I think we need to be kinder to everybody more often. When I came on tonight, I saw someone's backdrop was full of what I looked like spring. And I know that there's been a heat wave down south, but nature is bursting all around us. And I think that's been something we learned very early on at the start of lockdown last year. And we're now experiencing again as we're going through this period of time in the springtime. The crocus have been out. We've seen that the snowdrops out. The daffodils have been out. The tulips are now opening out in my garden. It's just brilliant. And I take my dog out for a walk. And what I just do is I stop and I look at the sky sometimes. I take a look at the water. I pass a canal. But the sound, there's less aircraft. There's less traffic on the roads. You can actually hear nature. And it's just to stop and take time and enjoy it, because too soon we're back at our work and we're busy, busy, busy with no time to do anything. And the last thing I'm saying about well-being here is having this routine of walking, cycling, running, jogging. The gyms have been closed a long time. I don't think you need a gym. Save your membership, get out and you can do something in the fresh air. And that activity, as we know, creates endorphins that then makes our mind so much more healthy and our body so much fitter at the same time. Resilience I spoke about. Young people particularly aren't as resilient as older people in my experience. And I think they've just got a different speed of response to things. They want everything fast and they don't seem to sort of just sit and relax for a wee while. But what we have to do is accept what we can control and reject what we can't. And I think that's maybe an old adage, and if you've heard it a lot of times before, but it's how often do we do that? I think we can hear these things, but we don't necessarily listen to these things. So I'm really asking for you to get on with it and accept these things that you can't change. Just part them, don't argue about them, and focus on the important things that you can change. Hunting the good, that's really saying, listen, there's lots of things we can waken up in the morning and be grateful for. I tell students at the college, one big word, and it's called choice.
Come in.
You get the choice when you start in the morning, and you can choose to waken up and feel happy. You can choose to waken up and have a bad day. I think that's the first thing they should be considering, is choose to hunt the good and be grateful for the small things in the world, because this time we've had of a whole year of it, it's amazing the things that we have found so important in life. Help and harm. When someone says something, very often we might think, oh my gosh, that's terrible, it's terrible. Think yourself, first of all, is it going to be helpful to you or is it going to harm you? If it's going to harm you and it's going to bring you to a negative peace of mind, park it, move on. If it's something that's going to give you a positive outlook, then that's a help side, and that's what you've got to stick with. Fountains and drains. Well, we all know that fountains are spouting great things and they're very entertaining to watch and so on. So fountains are people round about you, fountains of knowledge, fountains that are going to pass on all the best things and advice and keep you on the right side of things. Drains are the people who are just constantly pulling you down. And there's a wee phrase I talk about, sumo, is to shut up and move on. And these drains are the people you want to just say sumo to and get them out of your life and try to have more fountains in your life. And that way you're going to stay positive. And kind to yourself, we're talking about being kind to others. And the sort of thing that I speak about really here is when you're on aircraft, and it's been a long time since I've been on one, so I wee bit forget what it's like. But the one thing I do remember is the safety announcement. And when the cabin crew are going through their safety announcement and they're talking about when the air pressure in the cabin reduces, you're going to find that we're going to get one of these masks coming down from above you. And what they say very clearly is, you might have a young child with you, but please put the mask on yourself first before you put it on your young child. And that's what I'm saying about kindness. Think about yourself first. Be kind to yourself first before you share that kindness around. Because if you're not kind to yourself, the old adage is you can't pour from an empty cup. So please look after yourself, look after number one, and that way you can spend time to look after others. My final bit is just sort of takeaways that combine and summarise some of the things I've been saying. Have that right mindset. You've got the choice, to have an open mindset. If you have, that's fantastic. And I'm sure all of you will have, doing the jobs you're doing, you need to be. Find time to sit down in the peace and quiet, or it might be to walk with the headphones on, listen to a podcast or listen to your music. That's your time of the day for yourself. Connect to everyone as much as you possibly can and be with the right people. But at the same time, you should have energy to have a bit of active activity during the course of the day. And finally, I'm saying is to be kind. I don't know whether I've spoken too fast, Joe, or whether people have managed to keep up with my Scottish, Glaswegian, west of Scotland accent. But I don't know whether we could take any questions on that before I talk about the hospitality, the Hotelier's Charter.
I've had the captions on for myself. I don't know how the others handled, but I put the captions on and I survived. It was all right. I got there. It was lovely, Gordon. It really, really resonates with a lot of things that we spoke about and a lot of things that we want to emulate as membership organisations. It's really, really helpful. I have a couple of questions, and if anyone else has questions, feel free to put them into the chat, please. But one of the things that I would like to know is how many people have been actually supported through your charity, and what is the traffic that you're getting on your website? Is there any initiatives that you have run in the past that you're really proud of, and you can give us some stats about?
Sure. Well, before the lockdown, that's when we were doing training with students particularly, and we had 45 students in that space of time between sort of January and March that we had through our resilience training. We then got, if you like, lockdown, and that's where we started to develop materials for the website. But at the same time, we worked with an organisation in England called the Good Mental Health First Aid Company. And they're who deliver our mental health first aid training. And so far, we've got 36 staff through that programme. They went through October, November. We've got a further 16 literally starting this month, or tomorrow's April. There's 16 going through in April on a 2-day full mental health first aid certification programme, which is certificated for both England and Scotland. And we're also launching this month also for 16 people, a 1-day awareness mental health first aid programme. However, the website you're speaking about, I have to say the blogs and the in-profile, since we've started them, that's what's driven the traffic to the website. And having gone for about a year, we felt we weren't getting as much traffic that we could record and manage through the dashboard on the site. But now what we are getting is we're getting people on it for more clicks. And when we do put one of these blogs up, or when we put an in-profile up, we're getting about 120 people following. And that's really following social media.
That's really useful. And I think for a lot of the housekeepers here, and it would be really relevant when you're doing your retraining, when you're doing re-onboarding, to signpost to some of these really useful materials, because I think that's really important. I'm not picking up any questions on the chat, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop it in there. One of the things that I want to sort of pick up with you, Gordon, is the bit about the intervention and sort of the bit where you talked about talking to people who are struggling with mental health issues and are showing signs of severe mental health, not having the well-being. So, I've got a note here, from Delia saying our staff are at the front and, oh, that ran away from me. Let me try that again. Our staff are at the front line and last line of defense, and they all need a huge cuddle. And that's so true. But and for 90% of them, that cuddle will be, well, socially distanced cuddle will be, all that they need. But for some, there is more needed. And you talk about, talking to them and exploring further. But that intervention can be quite scary. And what if those people actually open up to you in a way that is beyond your capacity to support them? What would you suggest in that case? Imagine that someone was really affected by some of the things that are happening, and is potentially, you know, depressed to a point where they're considering where it goes beyond you being able to help. Let's call it that way. What would you suggest at that point?
Well, absolutely. And I think there are difficult conversations without a shadow of a doubt. And as soon as someone starts to open up and take you to that dark place, it is very, very concerning for the member of staff that's managing that situation. But it's important to remain calm, maybe take notes is what I would also advise. But I think it's understandable you have a duty of care to that member of staff to look after them. And that's where the signposting really would come in. And that's where your advice would be. If you then would take a look at the website, because they might not be able to do so, and find one or two of the resources that are on our site, or the Hospitality Action site. Likewise, you might have an employee assistance programme in the organisation, and if you have done, if you get that, their website will also give great resources to allow you to have the right answer to give back. And it's better not to give the wrong advice at all and say nothing, but just to sort of be consoling and understanding, to show you're listening. And very often evidence shows that by listening and participating in a conversation can make a huge difference than not. So just by having that conversation, Joe, is a huge move forward in a positive way.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to highlight the importance of signposting. And if people feel that they're not capable of taking that information further, or feel that they have explored as far as they are able to with their skill set, that it's important to signpost further and report to the relevant people as well, especially if we're talking about apprentices. If you have apprentices in your organizations, or people who are in traineeships, that this is really important to do that. So we have a really useful question here from Tricia, who's asking, who is the mental health first aid course open to? And Sarah's confirming that this is a great course and that it's hugely valuable. So Gordon, who is the mental health first aid course open to?
Well, unfortunately for many of the listeners here tonight, it's only for those in Scotland. Our funding can only fund those people in Scotland for that type of training and interaction. So if you are from a Scottish property, Tricia, please drop us a note in the inquiry and you'll get added to the list. But what has happened over the past number of weeks and months, people have contacted us to say, what are we doing? Can we give support? Sometimes it's been individuals, it's been restaurants, it's been hotels. Sometimes small hotel groups have been in touch. And that's how we have amassed those people. We've put it out on social media about offers. Please send your name in. So I've done that through both Facebook and Twitter. And that's how we have built up the names of those people that we've invested our money and funding in the past to do the programme. So if you are on this call just now and you're one of the Scottish hotels, please drop us a note on inquiries@hospitalityhealth.org.uk and we'll add you to a continuing list. We've got a spreadsheet, Joe, that just we keep adding to, and you'll go straight onto that list. So please let us know that you're on this call and you're interested. And I apologise again to our friends in England that we can't support that.
Well, for those friends in England, we do have options on funding.
In England.
There are pots of funding in England as well for things like this through ESF, European Social Fund, for some of you who are in London, and there are a couple of pots of funding for Southwest. So if you drop a note to your chair, regional chair, and express an interest, I'm sure that we will be able to signpost you to the right region and to pot of funding, especially if it's in relation to the mental health first aid programs or anything in relation to reopening and reopening training. Again, it's worth checking if Hospitality Action offers this. Liana says, not as a course. I can answer that question because I've asked, but there are other pots of funding depending on where you are. So it's very specific to the region depending on what you can access. Gordon, this is really helpful. Thank you so much. And we also have you the fountains and drains was brilliant. I use the concept of emotional vampires, but I much prefer this one, but because it just makes sense. So that's brilliant. We do have another aspect of information for you. We've got a couple of more minutes to talk about it. Hoteliers Charter, Gordon, how are you involved with Hoteliers Charter? We've heard a lot about it from Sally Beck, and it was first presented in 2019 in November when she was instated as a Hotelier of the Year, and she took time to present it because of the pandemic and everything. She has gone really well, she's really started promoting it now. So tell us a little bit about it and how you're involved with that.
Sure. Allow me just to share my screen. Let's see if this works, and you can tell me whether you can see that.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my full-time job, I should maybe have said before when I was speaking, that my role in the charity, having founded and the chair of the charity, is totally volunteering. I don't take anything from that at all. What pays my mortgage and the food on my table is my position at City of Glasgow College. And Sally Beck, who founded the Hoteliers Charter, it was formally launched with a press release about 3-4 weeks ago. I'm part of what's called the Education Forum. We've got somebody from Ireland, somebody from England, someone from Scotland on the Education Forum, and I'm part of that to try to push out the initiative, certainly across Scotland, particularly in education, but with our links with industry, it's important that we do what we can to use the links that we've already got through education with our industry partners. So once again, they have a number of platforms. If some of the members are willing to follow, if they've not already got them, you'll find out more about it, and you'll see the news as it's released with various developments from the Hoteliers Charter. So it was drawn up 2020, but Joe's absolutely right. It was talked about for about a year beforehand, and Sally wasn't really quite sure what direction to take it. But she's a fantastic lady. The GM at Royal Lancaster, a 5-star hotel in the City of London, decided to make a difference and to think, how can we do it in a very formal way? They've had very little funding, if any funding at all, to do this. There's a team working on it, literally as volunteers, and they've done an awful lot so far. But the idea is to promote it as a professional career, is what they're trying to do. And it's just to raise the opportunity, and I think never than before are we needing to get the right positive nature of our industry out there to encourage young people to choose it as a first choice career. Who should be part of this? We are primarily looking at hoteliers. So the GMs of the businesses that you work in would be the people, if you like, who would put their name to the application form that I'll speak about shortly, because it's hoteliers as opposed to the hotel charter. So it goes almost with the person, because that person is the leader of the organisation that's going to make change to their culture. And a little bit like the wellbeing charter that I spoke about from Hospitality Health, this is very similar in a sense of what it's trying to do. So we're really
almost tempted, Gordon, to argue that point of hoteliers charter, but I'll take up that with Sally rather than with you at some point, because I only realise now that, you know, it is a person rather than any of these lovely people here that are executive housekeepers that could be pledging to something like this departmentally. But again, I'll take up that with Sally. It's interesting that it's related to person. Is there any particular reason for that?
I think there's a danger if a person leaves an organisation, Joe, what could happen is that culture could also change. Although they don't necessarily take it with them, I think it goes with the business. It's almost like a partnership. So the general manager, the management team have got that alongside the business, but the business obviously could change its culture with new ownership. You know, if a corporate takes over the business, then you might find it's a completely different opportunity and operation there as far as how the culture's run. Staff might be disenchanted with a new team coming in. So really, there's a wee bit of partnership with who's at the top, as well as the business itself and the building, so to speak. But it's all about respect, as you can see. I'm not going to read these steps out. There are a total of 10 pledges that people are asked to sign up for when they do become it. The challenge we've got, however, at the moment within it is that who's monitoring it, because as Joe then says, you know, how's it going to be looked after depending who it's awarded to. But there is talks ongoing between Sally and the team with the AA. And so if the business has got an AA accolade, then when the inspector's out to do their inspection, this is something that's going to be added on as part of a checklist to see that they can provide evidence for the 10 commitments and pledges that you can see on the screen. It's linked to something that the People First have had for quite a wee while at the moment. I'm conscious a bit of time. I would normally come out and go into a couple of websites here, but I'll maybe avoid that tonight at this time. But People First, if you like, have set a thing called the Hospitality Commitment up, which is a wee bit like the start of a charter, actually inviting industry to behave in a very positive way, particularly for young people, providing good training and work experience, which would be valuable work experience as opposed to bad experience. And so the charter has been built a wee bit on the back of the Hospitality Commitment, which has been set up now for several years. I am, as I say, conscious of the time, so I may not go back. And maybe I will. How are we for time? Are we okay?
we have about 8 minutes, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't go out to the thing then, just allow some time for questions.
Yeah.
But there is a role. Why am I mentioning this? I'm making you aware of it, first of all, is to let you know that there is now a hoteliers charter where we should find the well-being of people, including fair pay and everything that goes with that. So you have a role to play. So what do you need to do here? And I did notice that, I think it was Tricia in the question before about mental health first aid training. She was asking really about her general manager, who maybe could do the training for that. But, this is an idea also I think we want to sell to general managers or maybe HR teams to take on board to convince the GM that it's going to be good for the culture for the organisation if you have the badge above the door to say that it's a hotelier charter membership. Some of you may visit and be on employers forums. And once again, please shout about it should you be on a forum external from your own business. And I've already been involved with the Greater Glasgow Hotel Association, the Edinburgh Hotel Association, Inverness and Aberdeen to advise them of this. And so we've now seen quite a number of member hotels coming on board following receiving the information. So we're seeing it almost daily and weekly, more hoteliers and hotels appearing on the map, because the website does have a map which does show you which hotels are within your local area that have got the charter. So what we were asking you to do in my role as a representative of the educational forum of the Hoteliers Charter is to try to get out there and sell. So spread the word and share the charter with as many people as you can. But that also includes your friends and your colleagues that you meet and talk to and maybe haven't come on the call tonight. Invite them to share it with their employers. Let's get the word out there, almost like the ripple effect of a pebble in the pond. Let's make this happen. What it doesn't do, and Joe might go back and speak to Sally about this as well, it is only for the hoteliers charter. This is not for hospitality charter. So restaurateurs, late night venues, bars and so on and so forth are not part of the hoteliers charter. That's something for these other sectors within the organisation, I think, to grasp the nettle and take it on board and make a difference within the culture and organisations that they're working in. So maybe spread the word and tell some of your friends and colleagues in the wider hospitality sector that somebody else should be moving this and taking it forward at the same time. And also, let's talk about young people, because we need them in the industry now more than ever before. And we know sometimes that their influencers, whether it's school teachers and parents, could consider that the industry maybe isn't the most pleasant place to be, but let them know now that the industry is changing, and it is changing more rapidly, I think, following the pandemic than it was before, to become a better place to work, a better place to be. And so spread the news to young people that they should be part of this new future that we talk about in the hospitality industry.
Absolutely.
This
is really good, Gordon. I have to say that I usually have to do some talking to ask questions and things like that. But Mary agrees with me that you have an amazing gift to keep the people's attention. And I'm going to assume that people have taken a lot out of this, and that the gift of gob is actually a really a positive thing. And everyone's saying, so great to hear about this, spreading the word about the charity, and it's really great that you've shared this. There was a good question here before I close for the evening about, is there a downloadable poster that can be printed and displayed for staff at work from Heather? So is there something that we can print out and share, Gordon?
I'll take that back to Sally as well, because that's a great question, and I like that idea hugely. That is just brilliant. Yeah. You should have it in a big poster to stick up once you get it. You're absolutely right. So the answer is no, not at the moment, but that's something I think we need to do, Joe.
That's brilliant. And the same for the hospitality health. Is there anything that we can display in our changing rooms, in our staff areas?
Yeah, I'll maybe send something round to you. We have a PDF, which is a leaflet we've done, and we did out with the paper invoices at one stage, but we also have it electronic, and I will send that to you to send to your members. And if they can print and put up, I'd be very much obliged to. Thank you for your members for doing so.
It's absolutely amazing. That is absolutely amazing. We're just receiving really great messages about that this presentation couldn't come in at a more relevant time. So I think, Gordon, we would like to really thank you on behalf of all of the members and everyone on this Zoom call. Joe, anything from you at this point?
I just want to say thank you, Gordon, so much. And as Joe said, yeah, and she said you had the gift of the gab. We filled in that hour well. Thank you so much for passing on so much information. I think everybody can take away something from that, and as we said, like, be kind to everybody and be kind to yourself.
That's absolutely so true. And remember the drains and the fountains. I think that's going to be the visual of the day. And thank you very much for coming and attending. This has been an amazing Zoom call with, you know, over 50 participants at one point, which is amazing. So we're hoping that Yorkshire is going to be doing exactly the same thing next month. So we're looking forward to doing that. See you in a month's time. Thank you very much, Gordon. Have an amazing evening and keep safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You take care. Have a lovely Easter.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.